Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Today I am going to talk about pragmatics and stylistics. Up till now, we have covered reader response theory, we have talked about affective stylistics, and today we are going to talk about pragmatic stylistics. Again, we should remember that stylistics, when it came out of formalism, new criticism, or structuralism, it was focusing on words on the page. It was focusing on properties of language. So, properties of language usually we find on the page, that how poem is composed, what kind of literary devices have been used by the author. So all these literary or linguistic devices, they are in the form of language and they are there on the page. So basically, it means that we are doing the stylistic analysis at just one discourse level. There are other levels of discourse as well. Since stylistics, it was focusing on poems in the beginning, so poems were usually short and teachers were manipulating those poems in the classroom to teach language, to make people understand that how the concept of defamiliarization it works in literature, how the concept of deviation and parallelism they work in literature, how language is foregrounded, how deviation is foregrounded. So, usually that analysis was at one level of discourse. But when we read today fiction, when we read today novel, we see that there are various levels of discourse, and at various levels, multiple analyses, multiple meanings, multiple interpretations can be created. For example, in poem, the author is producing a text, is producing a poem for the readers. But when we talk about fiction or novel, we see that there is an author who is producing the text for the reader, and then there is a narrator who is telling the story to the narratee. For example, in the novel The Heart of Darkness, we see the narrator sitting on the deck. He is there on a boat, and narratees, they are sitting also there on the deck of the boat, and narrator is telling the story to the narratee. So that is another level of analysis where multiple interpretations will be made, where multiple meanings will be created. Then, when the narrator is telling the story to the narratee, there are many characters, and these characters are interacting with one another. And when they are interacting with one another, they are using language. They are using language in the form of dialogues. So we should remember that discourse has got multiple levels. So stylistic analysis at multiple levels is required. Therefore, stylistics came into being. And since, therefore, pragmatics came into being. And since stylistics takes ideas, critical tools from various subjects, from various disciplines, it gets data in the form of words, okay, and we are supposed to give the interpretation, we are supposed to see how the author is making use of language and he or she is producing his or her distinctive style. So we will have to see how interaction is working on, how interaction is going on between different characters, what kind of language they are using, how they are producing the discourse. So stylistics brings in conversation analysis. Stylistics takes ideas, critical tools from conversation analysis, from discourse analysis. In conversation analysis, which I have already uploaded my video, you can watch that video. In detail, I have talked about conversation analysis, but here to some extent, I will be talking about conversation analysis again because characters are involved in the drama, characters are involved in the novel, and they are producing talk, they are producing discourse. So, stylistics takes helps from conversation analysis. And Garfinkel and Goffman in 1970s, when they were working and using ethnomethodological analysis, they took the data from the conversation of the people and they analyzed the conversation. Basically, it was a telephonic data which was transcribed and then analyzed. So, stylisticians they bring in the ideas of conversation analysis and they use it in stylistics. So, we have seen stylisticians like Burton and Mandala, and they have demonstrated that how structures are apparent in fictional dialogue, showing conversation analysis to be an analytical method which is appropriate for stylistic analysis. So there are many things in conversation like opening conversation, closing of conversation, feedback in conversation, turn taking in conversation. I cannot discuss all of them here. They are there in another video, that is conversation analysis. But some of the ideas, as I have told you, will be discussed here. So one of those ideas is the idea of turn taking, how people they take turns. And in turn taking, we have got constructional units and we have got turn allocational units. When one speaker is speaking, the other is listening, and then the one speaker either he or she nominates the other person, or the other person who is the listener right now grabs the turn, takes the floor, and then he or she gives the answer, replies back. So, when we are talking about turns, what we see that turn sometimes it is given to the other person willingly, and sometimes the other person he takes it from the first person, or sometimes the person who is taking long turns, making long speeches, creating long sentences, and grabbing the floor, it means that he is a powerful person, she is a powerful person. So even in pragmatic analysis, we are looking at the power structures, that how they work. So sometimes the person is weak physically, he is short in stature, and the other person is quite tall in stature. But the kind of role that this short man is having in the society, it is very important. That is why he grabs the floor for a longer period of time and speaks and speaks and speaks, and the other person is on waiting. So it means that here the power is residing with that person who is a short statured, but because of his role, he is very dominant in the conversation. So we should also understand here the concept of adjacency pairs. When one person speaks, the other person gives the answer. So we get two parts of the pair, first pair part and second pair part. In Urdu, we have Assalamu alaikum, and the other person answers Wa alaikum assalam. So in this way, we have got adjacency pair. First pair part Assalamu alaikum and second pair part Wa alaikum assalam. So it has made adjacency pair. And when the speaker is speaking, he has certain ideas about the person and he has certain expectations that what kind of answer is going to come from the other person. We have got the concept of presupposition in pragmatics. So when we are speaking with the other person, we know the background of the person, we know the context in which we are talking, we know the setting in which we are talking, we know our role, we know the role of the other person, we know what are our expectations from the other person, we know what he is going to understand and what kind of answer he is going to give. Sometimes we have presupposition and we know that this is the expected answer, and sometimes there are certain unexpected answers as well, or there is no answer at all as well. I don't want to make a long video, so I will not be covering each and everything related to pragmatics here, but some of the ideas, and then I'll make another video of pragmatics and stylistics. So presuppositions concept is being discussed, taking into consideration the context, taking into consideration the knowledge of the world, knowledge of the person with whom we are talking. So then accordingly we speak. I know from whom I can ask for money. I know with whom I can share my personal ideas. I know with whom I will have to be at a distance. I should not cross my space or his space. So it all depends on the kind of relationship that I am enjoying with that person. I was talking about turn taking. I was talking about adjacency pair. So here the author talks about good morning. Of course, the second pair part will be good morning. But if one person says good morning and the other person says fuck off, look at the kind of expressions that I have given. Fuck off. It means the person is not happy. The person is not going to say good morning in response. So it is a dispreferred adjacency pair. It is a dispreferred second pair part which is uttered by the listener. Who was the speaker then? Instead of answering, saying good morning, he said fuck off. And same is the case if I say assalamu alaikum and the person is angry with me and he does not want to talk to me, so he says dafa ho jao. I don't want to talk to you. Though it is not a preferred second pair part, it is a dispreferred second pair part which is uttered by the person, but it gives us the idea. There is an implicature which is implied here. It tells the reader that the relationship between these two characters is not good. So interpretation, the role of interpretation has to be there. Interpretation has to be carried out now. Pragmatically, we understand that these two people are not on good terms. So one is saying good morning, the other is saying fuck off. One is saying assalamu alaikum, the other is saying dafa ho jao. So second pair part is not preferred. It means that author has not written all these things. There are only dialogues. There is only text. So pragmatic analysis at the level of another level of discourse is required. So pragmatically speaking, we understand it means that these two people are not on good terms. We understand that there is something bad in them. That is why they are not talking the way they should talk. The author has given the example from Dennis Potter's television drama Pennies from Heaven. So there are two characters, John and Arthur. John is very late today. These two people are married. They are in their mid 30s. Arthur is going back home and it is late night time. John is asleep. But when Arthur enters the room of John and Arthur, John gets up. Now John speaks and she says, have you been drinking, Arthur? Now Arthur was not expecting this question. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was having some issue. Maybe he could not come on time because he was on duty. So he mimics, he copies the sentence of his wife, and he says, "Have you been drinking, Arthur?" Look at my facial expressions. Look at the way I have copied this sentence. So, author is not telling us that what is going on between them. Pragmatic interpretation is required. At another discourse level, the reader understands, because reader is also part of the society. So you should also understand that this is how discourse is produced, that this is how dialogue goes on between husband and wife. So maybe right now they are in angry mood, so interpretation is required. You will have to add, you will have to write, you will have to see the situation, you will have to understand the cognitive context in which John was, and the way Arthur copied the sentence of John. "Have you been drinking, Arthur?" So, multiple interpretations can be made. So, in conversation analysis, from conversation analysis, stylisticians, they bring in their tools for analyzing the data which is given there in the form of dialogues, if they are novels or if they are dramas. But we can apply the ideas of conversation analysis on dialogues. And of course, when there is conversation, there is context, there is setting, there is presupposition, there is implicature. That how do we imply meaning? For example, there is another example given in the text. Two friends, they are talking. Friend one says, A says, "What about going to the cinema?" So it is an indirect question. He is not directly asking you that you should accompany him to cinema. But he has, of course, asked you indirectly and politely that if you could accompany him. So the answer which is coming from the speaker B is, well, the word well itself is telling the story that the person is not going to say yes. It means that some other negative, dispreferred, unexpected response is going to come. Well, I have got an essay to write. So he has used dispreferred pair part. And in this way, this is again adjacency pair. So in dispreferred pair part, it could be preferred as well. It is up to you that how you interpret, how you have gone through the whole situation. But right now it looks to me that this is dispreferred pair part, because he was not expecting this answer. So the answer has come, well, I've got an essay to write. So he has refused to go with that person to the cinema. And this is what we do in our day to day conversation, in our day to day life. When we are interacting with our friends, we know with whom we are going to make a request, and with whom I will catch him, grab him from the hand, and I will say, you will have to accompany me. Let's move. You cannot say no to me. So it depends the kind of relationship that you are enjoying with that person. So pragmatics, which means that how language is used in context, it helps stylisticians to carry out the stylistic analysis of a novel, of a dialogue which is there in the drama and even in prose. And I have talked about presupposition as well. So there is conversational implicature as well. So sometimes there is, conversational implicature. We talk about Grice maxims, maxim of quality, quantity, relevance, and manner. So quality says that we should be truthful, but there are people, they are masters, they will tell the lie. Sometimes there is flouting. When you do not tell a lie, you use metaphors and similes, you exaggerate the situation, but you want the listener should be able to understand that you are flouting. Your intention is not to deceive the listener, then you are flouting. But when your intention is to deceive the listener, then you are violating. So, in all kinds of context, in all kinds of dialogues, in all kinds of text, we see that people do not follow these four maxims that Grice has given in pragmatics. Maxim of quality: tell the truth. If you have evidence for something, then say it, otherwise, don't say it. And say whatever is required. Do not say more, do not say less. Quantity. Do not add further examples or further things. In Urdu, we call it mirch masala. Do not add mirch masala. Do not go for exaggeration. And then we have got relation. Give a relevant answer. Somebody is saying, what time is it? Tell him or her the exact time. Or the plane landed at 6 o'clock. Maybe the plane landed at 6:04, but you are saying at 6 o'clock. So you are not telling the exact time. And then manner, your style. How do you say it? You should not have ambiguity in it. You should not create, okay, ambiguity, multiple meanings. This is what Grice says when Grice talks about, maxims, four maxims. But all these people, all these texts, all these discourses, they do not follow Grice maxims. You will find mirch masala, you will find that people they are adding, that people they are exaggerating, that people are not telling the truth, they are lying. So examples have been given in the book as well, again from politicians, okay, that usually they do not tell the truth, okay, and they are very clever. Sometimes they even do not give the answer. When they do not give the answer, that is called opting out. That you do not give the answer, you say no. You don't even say no, but then implicature is implied. You will have to make the inference that what kind of discourse is being produced, what kind of meanings are there. I don't want to read these examples, okay. These examples are there, but we have our cultural restraints and constraints. So if we I give you the examples from our politicians, okay. You ask them a question कि ये पैसा कहाँ से आया है? How did you get all these, okay, plots and money and so many other resources? So sometimes they become quiet and they do not give the answer, and they say, go ahead, some other answer, ask some other question. So when you do not give the answer, this means opting out, okay, in stylistics. So in dialogues, you will find that people opt out for certain at certain places at certain times. They do not give the answer. So not only do they violate and flout the maxims, but sometimes they do not even give the answer. So this is the first part of pragmatic stylistics that I have talked about. I have been asked that I should not make longer videos, so I will be making another video because there are many other concepts of pragmatics that we will be discussing later on. But today I have talked about that how language is used in context, what is the role of pragmatics in stylistics, and how pragmatic analysis helps the stylisticians, and they can come to know about the style of the author, of the text producer, and some of the ideas like presupposition, implicature, flouting or violation of the maxims, and turn taking we have talked about today. Thank you very much.